Goida Galmal, my naam is Maynard Austria, and welcome in Africa.
This is Africa. Samina, mina, waka, waka, Samina, mina, sakalegua. This time for Africa. Listen to your
African culture.
The culture of Africa is varied and manifold, consisting of a mixture of countries with various tribes that each have their unique characteristic from the continent of Africa. It is a product of the diverse populations that inhabit the continent of Africa and the African diasporas. Africa has numerous ethnic nationalities, all with varying qualities such as language, dishes, greetings, and dances. However, all African people shares a series of dominant cultural traits which distinguish African culture from the rest of the world. For example, social values, religions, morals, political values, economics, and aesthetic values all contribute to African culture.
African traditional clothing.
Clothing was not generally needed for warmth or protection in most areas of the African continent due to the warm and hospitable climate, and many tribes did not wear much at all. The men wore just a loincloth or apron, and the women wore wraps around their waist or breast, often adorning the rest of their bodies with scarification and paint orcs. Traditional and contemporary woven and/or printed fabric, wrapped or draped around the body forms the nucleus of tribal clothing. Adornment of the body with headdresses, bags, belts, collars, girdles, and capes made from beads, feather, leather, gold and silver, seashells, ostrich eggshell, ivory, buttons, fur, skins, bones, animal tails and hair, raffia, wood, grass, bells, and pressed metal all contribute to a rich and embellished costume used for tribal purposes. Combined with the weathering of headbands, necklaces, bracelets, wristlets, armbands, and anklets, and old perfume skin and dressed hair, adult women and men could be splendidly worn down with the weight of their volume of their dress. The skin of an animal was often chosen for symbolic significance and showed tribal allegiance or personal totems. Sometimes, it needed to be kept intact to bring good health and good luck to the wearer. Garments were worn to mark the status of an individual or to mark a special ritual or passage of time as people move from one state to another.
Africa by David Diop. Africa, my Africa. Africa of proud warriors in ancestral savannas. Africa of whom my grandmother sings. On the banks of the distant river, I have never known you. But your blood flows in my veins, your beautiful black blood that irrigates the field. The blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work, the work of your slavery. Africa, tell me, Africa, is this your back that is unbent? This back that never breaks under the weight of humiliation. This back trembling with red scars and saying no to the whip under the midday sun. But a grave voice answers me, impetuous child, that tree, young and strong. That tree over there, splendidly alone amidst white and faded flowers. That is your Africa, springing up anew, springing up patiently, obstinately, whose fruit bit by bit acquires the bitter taste of liberty. Africa by David Diop. Interpretation of the poem.
This poem is written by David Diop, a black African who was born in France in 1927. His father was from Senegal and his mother from Cameroon, and he grew up in France and West Africa, aware of both cultures and traditions. He was deeply concerned by the questions of independence from colonial rule. This poem is a dramatic monologue where the speaker seems to be in conversation with Africa. The poem can be thematically divided into three parts: pre-colonial Africa, colonial Africa, and post-colonial Africa. Thematic analysis, colonial torture, and exploitation. There are evidences of torture and exploitation in the poem due to the fact that the poet expresses how the sweat of African was lost in the vein. The blood of your sweat, the sweat of your work. All this was done at a time when Africans were turned into slaves and worked for their masters without any benefit. The work of their slavery, the slavery of your children. Oppression and humiliation. Oppression and humiliation were common practices in colonial time. They were used to force Africans to work for colonizers without objection. This has left scars to Africa that we still depend on them even when they seem to mistreat us. This back that breaks under the weight of humiliation. This back trembling with red scars and saying yes to the whip under the midday sun. Identity and awareness. The poet, however, seems to be aware of his identity as Black African. Although he grew up in France, he shows that black blood flows in his veins, which is to say he is still an African regardless of where he grew up. I have known you, but your blood flows in my veins. The voice that answers Diop sums up his African identity. Impetuous son, that tree young and strong, that tree in splendid loneliness amidst white and faded flowers. That is your Africa, your Africa. Effects of colonialism. The poet concludes his poem by showing the effects that colonialism had on African continent. Nevertheless, he seems to be optimistic that at least Africa is growing up again just like a young tree. That is your Africa, that grows again patiently, obstinately.
This time for Africa.
Bahid ang